All right, I'm gonna do a updated hot tub video. So here's extra filters about once a year or so. We'll need to switch those out. We've got a hot water line and a cold water line if you need to fill up, or I usually clean the filter with the cold line, and if I have to take water out, I'll refill it with the hot just because it heats very slowly. We've got most of our chemicals over here. So this is the test strips. This is to raise the pH, just baking soda. The sanitizing shock, this is chlorine. The defoamer is sometimes nice if it's got a lot of foam. How you doing? This is for cleaning the filter. If for some reason you get the pH too high, this is just the pH down. We'll take it back down. These little floating balls, these are the Frog brand. These are the chlorine cartridges. The blue is more like a mineral. So I think the mineral is about every, forget what it is. It's about every few months, I think, for the mineral. And I think the chlorine's about every 4 weeks, I think. But I'll show you when it flips over, you kind of know when to change it. So the hot tub cover, you just flip this over. Pull this back and it's just a little teeter-totter. Sits back like that. So these hot tubs, this one and the Burlingame are both 110, which is just a normal outlet. So since they're lower power, they take a lot longer to heat up. So that's why I use the hot water line if it's available. Like Burlingame doesn't really have one. I'd have to hook it up to the hot water tank to fill it up. But usually this one has some sediment on it, and since it's white, it usually has like some grime over here on the side to clean up. But you can see the floating ball here. So if it's ever, this is a new one, you can hear it. So if the ball's ever, you know, kind of like upside down like that, that's how you know it's empty. We usually leave it either on the off setting or the 1 setting. And you can kind of just monitor the chlorine levels that way. For some reason this fell in. But I usually inspect the filter every time. If it looks like it's brown or has a bunch of oils on it, like lotions, I'll spray it down with that cleaner. Let it sit for about 5 minutes and then hose it off real good and put it back in. When you take the filter out, you want to make sure the hot tub's off, so you can just turn it off or unplug it. The way this thing works is you plug the top here, you put it in the water down to the bottom, it creates just a vacuum suction. You let go on the top and it sucks out the bottom stuff. You want to make sure the water levels are nice and high above the jets. If it gets too low, then that can mess up the pump. This water looks visibly pretty decent. It's a little bit green. I think Chris said yesterday the chlorine was low. So we'll get the tester out and see what it looks like. All right, so you put your tester in there for about 3 seconds or so, pull it back out. It'll show you the kind of what's low. Typically the pH is a little bit low. I never really know why, so I'm always having to add just a little bit of baking soda. And the baking soda for some reason takes a while to kind of dissipate in the hot tub and kind of raise that. So you don't want to add too much because, you know, a few hours from now it may raise. It's not very immediate when you put it in. The alkalinity is usually a little bit low. The pH and alkalinity kind of go together, so that'll be baking soda. We'll try to raise that a little bit. Bromine we don't use. That's a substitute for chlorine, so don't worry about the bromine one. The free chlorine looks very non-existent. So that ball is supposed to be slowly releasing chlorine. So if it's really low, I'm gonna add some today just to get that up. The free chlorine means it's still available and free to kill things. The total chlorine means it's already kind of been used up. It's already killed something. And you want those numbers to be pretty close together. So like sometimes if it's green and dirty, you'll have like a total chlorine of like 10 and a free chlorine of like, you know, a half or 1. And to get rid of that, you're gonna have to take about half the water out and fill it up with some new water, or let it run with the cover off, and that'll kind of burn off some of the total chlorine. But this is pretty good. It's just low on chlorine is why it's probably a little bit green. The total hardness I don't worry too much about. That's mostly to protect the hot tub equipment if that was way off, but our tap water is pretty decent, so it's not gonna really harm it. To drain it, if you ever have to drain it, I usually just use a bucket and just do it by hand, but there is a drain plug over here. If I can remember how to do it, it kind of pops out. Yeah, it pops out like that. You can put a garden hose on it, and that'll cause it to, I can't remember, I think when you push it back in slightly, yeah. So you push it back in slightly, that's when the water starts coming out. So you pop it out all the way and there's no water coming out. About halfway in, it starts draining again. So you just put the cap back on and push it back in. It's kind of like a weird quarter turn. And we have a little bitty hose in there you can connect it to, but it's okay to drain it kind of out through here because there's drains on the patio. But like I said, it's quicker just to get a 5-gallon bucket and kind of do it by hand, just to get half the water out, put some new water in. That usually fixes the high total chlorine levels. But we're pretty good today. It's not too bad. So I'll just go get some of that shock. So this is chlorine sanitizing shock. This is for the guests to use. This is basically kind of like OxiClean. It's just an oxidizing shock. It's chlorine free. So this isn't gonna actually add chlorine. That's for the guests to use after each time they use it, just to kind of sanitize it, because it just kills everything with oxygen. This will actually add chlorine to it. So I'll add some of that. I'll add a scoop of baking soda. So usually I do a capful of this one and then just about, I don't know, half or a quarter of a cup of baking soda. I usually just use a little bit of baking soda. So I'll put some baking soda in there, a cap full of that. I'll let it run for about, 15 minutes or so, let it mix up, and then I'll retest it with a test strip, make sure it's okay. I'll vacuum out the debris. I'll wipe it down if there's anything to wipe. If it's real foamy, I'll add some defoamer, and that's about it.